Don't freeze up.
I think this should run.
Make it back here, yeah.
Just making sure, because
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're currently streaming.
Alright.
Where do we view the stream? YouTube. Just on the channel? But on the Autoptic Festival channel?
I think so.
Oh, it says, okay, it says live. It says live now. Autoptic Fest Run. I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
Good brush, isn't it? What brush is this? What brush even is this?
I don't know. They would give you an iFrame rebate.
That's too much. That's too much.
So, this is the Autoptic TV test. I'm here with Sean Knickerbocker, who is a cartoonist.
Hello.
And a member of the Autoptic board. We are here to raise money for Autoptic's 2020 festival. So you've done Autoptic in the past.
Yes.
Can you think of any interesting experiences that you've had at Autoptic?
Yeah. So the first Autoptic I did was the show in 2015. Is that the one? 2015, 2014, 2015, right? And I was living in Mankato at the time, which is like 80 miles south of Minneapolis. And I had been living in Minnesota for about a year or so, but I hadn't really been able to connect to anybody in the cartooning community at the time. So going to that show was kind of like a really nice introduction to the community and as a whole. My table was right next to Zach Sally's table, so I got to see all sorts of pretty cool local cartoonists swinging by. It was the first time I ran into to our friend Peter Fake. This is all I got. His name drop. That's all I got. So meeting lots of local cartoonists, that was definitely a nice thing. Like cartooning, as everybody always says, is it's a lonely endeavor. Yeah. So after living in Minnesota for a little over a year and not really having much of a community, it was really refreshing to talk to cartoonists again, and definitely shifted my opinion in terms of staying in the Midwest. I decided not everywhere was like Mankato, Minnesota, and I eventually moved up here. So, I mean, if anyone from the Minneapolis, city council is listening, like this event was a draw. Now I'm an upstanding, tax-paying citizen, and they have Autoptic to thank for that.
So I'm sort of curious about you went to school in Vermont, right? The cartoon.
Yeah, I went to the Center for Cartoon Studies in Vermont, White River Junction, and that was great. It was a lot of fun. I could name drop a lot there as well.
Could you name drop?
My teacher, Jason Lutz, I don't know. Jason was great. Everyone there is great. Steve Bissett is also a teacher there. He knows everything about comics, and he's the nicest person in the world. Michelle Ollie, who I believe was actually someone that worked for MCAT for a while, she's the director at CCS, and she, I respect her a lot. She's a very, very business savvy, kind person who certainly helped me out with a lot of jams. So that community as a whole is really fantastic too. My cohort, we're still all pretty tightly knit, and that I think that once again, as a cartoonist, having that community there and having people to interact with and people to show your work to is awesome, right? Like that's any kind of, I'm sure the same goes for MCAT or any other kind of program. Having people that are kind of a captive audience that have to have some sort of critical response to your work every once in a while is really nice. Like out in the wild, you don't really get that unless someone has a problem with you or thinks you're the greatest thing ever, both of which aren't necessarily super helpful in terms of criticism. So it's nice to have like a group of like 20 people that know your work really well and have opinions about the newest thing you're doing. Like that's a really valuable asset that especially a young cartoonist doesn't really have access to. So, I mean, you know, you certainly don't need a cartoon college education, but I think there are a lot of really nice benefits to having that community to bounce off of.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting place to go. But then, what brought you to Minnesota?
Well, my wife, she ended up going to an MFA writing program in Mankato, which is actually a pretty prestigious writing program. So we moved out here for that. And that was like a 3-year program. And I kind of like made a promise to myself. I'm like, I'm not going to like waste my time and I have like a specific 3 years I'm going to spend in the Midwest. So I'm going to make like a very sad Midwestern comic. And that's what I did. My first graphic novel, Killbuck, is like all about like living in like cold rural places. So, I mean, I grew up in that kind of stuff, but moving to Mankato and being around that again definitely helped bring up a lot of those memories and feelings. So, have you ever been to Mankato?
I don't think so. You said it's like 80 miles from here?
Yeah, and I mean, it's got some dark history to it. It's like the home to, you know, our country's largest mass execution in history. You know, like 39. This is dark, but I mean, like, if anyone is watching this, you look into Minnesota's history with the indigenous people here. It's rather atrocious, but it's really worth knowing about. And I think a lot of people, especially outside of the state, aren't really familiar with this region's particular role in that whole thing. So, dark history, but I mean, especially in this day and age, worth reading up on, worth being familiar with, worth understanding. Yeah, there are good things about Mankato too. There's a couple of nice bars. They have really good cheese curds. There's a really good art community there too. I was a volunteer for a like a small up and coming art gallery that worked a lot with like rural youth, which kind of tugged at my heartstrings because once upon a time I was a rural youth that wanted to be a creative person and I didn't have that kind of place to be a weirdo, so it was cool to be kind of part of something that kind of offered that option for young people in the area. It's pretty cool.
I've read some of your work, and it seems like that's part of what your body of work deals with, sort of rural American stories.
Yeah. I mean, it has so far. There's always that write what you know kind of stuff, and I think that's a really good jumping off point, and something I'm trying to move past now a little bit as I've gotten my feet more wet with longer narratives. But that's definitely, I mean, that informs my writing and my worldview a lot. And the last couple of years have been particularly frustrating when it comes to the narrative of people living in rural places, because there seems to be this conception that out in the rural areas, it's uncivilized, reactionary, right-wing people, which, of course, those people are there, but there seems to be this concept that those people don't exist here in the city, and that's very much not true. And you'd probably find that most people in rural areas aren't really involved in politics or interested in them at all because there's nothing for them there. And I think that's a more difficult truth for people to come to terms with, and that's kind of like what I try and write about a little bit. Offer that kind of alternative.
So you're working on anything right now in terms of
Yeah, I am. I'm starting, I'm starting a longer project, and I feel like every time I do that, it's always really intimidating, and I always like forget how to write. It seems like so I have to like reteach myself how to write and like rethink how I write. Not so much drawing. I mean, I'm not the best drawer in the world, but like I'm dumb enough to feel rather confident in my drawing. Whereas like writing, like I know that I'm an atrocious writer, so I spend a lot of time kind of rethinking how I edit things. As I had mentioned, my wife, she went to a creative writing program. She's a poet, and there's this completely different culture in terms of writing when it comes to poetry or prose, where they're pretty ruthless when it comes to editing, which is really hard to do in comics. You know, you put 8 hours into a page, and you don't want to make those edits. So I'm trying to spend a lot more time up front being ruthless with editing before I even get to the pencil stage, which means like not a lot of action in terms of drawing. You know, like it's a lot of like drawing post-it notes and moving around, and then there's this constant pressure of like I'm not making any comics. I'm just putting stuff in this binder, and all my friends on Instagram are drawing these really cool comics. Look at what MS Harkness is doing. Oh my god, like. So there's a lot of pressure there. But yeah, the thing I'm working on right now is I'm trying to do something a little different. Involves like some folks living in Orlando, Florida, kind of touching on like the the Gulf oil spill crisis in 2009 a little bit, but trying to make like an interesting narrative out of that. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Yeah. This sad glum dude. This is every comic I've ever drawn right here. It's pathetic. Delete this. Yeah. But Autoptic's gonna be rad. I'm excited to. I'm glad to be on the board. I'm glad I get to participate in that way and kind of have my hand in the community here. It's really fun. It's been really fun working with everybody here and being able to contribute to the community outside of just drawing comics, offering something else. So.
It's interesting that it's like almost exactly a year from now is the next festival.
Yeah.
Feels like it's a ways off.
It does, but like, yeah, I mean, like that's nothing. It's nothing. It's gonna be here, and we'll all be scrambling to try and make it the best show we can make, and I'm excited that we're going to do a really great job. Though I think it's going to be awesome. This new space, I think, is going to be much more accessible. It's a brighter venue as well. I mean, I have this thing, and this is a personal thing, but like whenever I go into a place like the previous place we're in, which is really beautiful, and I think it's a cool venue, it's a cool space, but I always get really like afraid I'm going to break something. I have this constant fear that if I touch anything, I'm going to break it, and I can't afford anything in there. So it will be nice to be in a space where like if I feel like I do somehow go on like an insane rampage, like I won't do that much like dollar damage. Not that I've ever done anything like that, but I'm always afraid that like I will just fall into something. There's these Warhol originals at that place. I'm like, I'm just going to like Chris Farley it and just like wreck my hand through this print, but
yeah. In the new space, I feel like it's going to bring a new feeling sort of to the show.
Yeah. And, at this point, like, I think that's good, right? It's good to see shows evolve like that. Growth is good. Evolution is good. I mean, the show, we're coming up on, the first show was, 2012? Was that the first show? Bob?
No, it was an odd year. So it was
2013?
2013.
Yeah.
2015. Skip 2017.
Did 2018. So, yeah. So, fourth show, 7 years into it, like, yeah, there's going to be some changes. I mean, just, Minneapolis as a whole has changed so much. So, like, it's to be expected and, good to embrace. and put new ideas out there, work with new artists. That's the cool thing too, like seeing all these people that I had met in 2015 now, just have all these so many people have these really awesome careers going on now. And I keep seeing all these other new cartoonists in the area popping up and doing really cool work. So I'm really excited to see what 2020 brings for the Minneapolis scene and the Midwest cartooning scene as a whole.
Through your day job, do you feel like you get to see some of that?
I do a little bit, yeah. So my day job is I'm a book printing representative for a short run digital print company called Bookmobile. It's actually kind of my dream job. I'm a real big print nerd. I got really into screen printing and mini comics and zine making, in my early 20s. And my buddy and I convinced ourselves that that was what our career was going to be, and we actually ran our own short-run digital print business ourselves, and we were trying to start this whole printing and distribution and fulfillment service for cartoonists. And we kept running up against issues in terms of financing the whole project and making money off of it, because we were really good at underpricing our services. So this place I'm working at now is like an actual place that does all that stuff, but ran by somebody that understands business. So I don't have to worry about understanding that stuff. There's someone that's just as passionate and dorky about running a business as I am about printing stuff. So we're a good team. But I do get to see all sorts of cool comic stuff. Alex had a comic come through there recently, and it's fun to work with him. And I've worked with some of my old classmates from CCS from time to time. We work with Uncivilized Books for a lot of their bound galleys. So I get to see all sorts of really neat stuff come through.
We have a question from the chat.
Yeah.
We don't really, but we have a question from.
I was going to say, wow,
we have a
someone's
question
watching
from
this.
me.
Yeah.
What is the weirdest book that you've seen come through? Like in terms of the printing side of it.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
That's a less mean question.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the weirdest. I'd say the most exotic book. We did a series of it was a 24-volume set of archived photos from. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name. He was like a Native American photographer, and there's some controversy around this. This Curtis was his name. There's some controversy around this particular photographer because years after this he worked, there was some claims that he was staging some of these photographs, and some of them weren't even that accurate of what he was trying to photograph in terms of how he was dressing up his models. But there is a certain level of he was archiving and putting, tracking, at least in reporting, this particular region's Native American traditions a little bit. So it's cool that he was doing that. So it's a 24-volume set of books. They're all very large. It's like an 18-month project. There's a lot of going back and forth in terms of getting the color just right. That was probably the most intense project I've ever worked on. But it was definitely very interesting to see all the different problems that arise when you try and make a 24-volume hardcover book set. Yeah, and it definitely felt like a level up moment in terms of figuring out the logistics of printing that, and it was cool.
Person in chat says thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. You're welcome, person in chat.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do a little troubleshooting during the test.
Sure. Yes, we're also. You guys continue working to troubleshoot some things.
For your work, you do more than just comics. You print books, hardcovers, multi-volume work.
Yeah, we print all sorts of stuff. I mean, most of the stuff I'd say we do is definitely poetry, prose, literary kind of stuff. Occasionally we do comics. That's something we're trying to expand into. I mean, certainly because I'm obviously such a comics enthusiast. I'm definitely trying to figure out a way that we can support that community more. And I'm hoping within the next year or so we can do that, because there's definitely, if you're a cartoonist, it's definitely difficult to try and get your work out there, find the distribution, find a place to reliably print things. So there's a lot of problems to be fixed, a lot of solutions to be presented. So
Stealing your
No,
I'm
you
stealing your thing so that I can check something. Hello, chat. There's nobody in chat.
Bob's in
But
chat.
there
Look
might be people later though. So so somewhere in here we're going to try to see if there's a way to remember to guard your privacy. Man. Okay, this is the settings.
I'm sorry, I'm fighting with you.
Do you... Sorry. So we have for easier next stream setup. So we've got a stream URL. Would that be useful? What are you using right now?
I'm sorry. What's the question?
So we're looking for some sort of setting.
So what happens is it says video unavailable. Play this video on YouTube. Playback on other websites has been disabled by the video.
Okay. So we need to figure out sort of where that setting might lie.
Is it just in the general YouTube settings? Because this is the stream settings. So it'd be like
Yeah, I mean, it might be. It kind of makes sense if it was under the streaming settings, but
it would. I'm not saying one.
It's currently set to be public.
It's entertainment.
It is.
Hey, baby.
Hey, yeah.
This is entertainment.
Welcome.
This is more than my Final Fantasy streams got.
Create a
I'll tell you
highlight.
that
I don't
much.
know how to do this.
No one wants to see me grind my materia to.
I don't.
master.
I don't want to do this anymore. No, please stop. Okay. The answer may be that this is something I have to figure out.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about too, in terms of usability, if we could get like a wireless keyboard or another key, because this is kind of I don't know.
Mess, yeah.
So-
That's a possibility. I have a wireless keyboard that I can probably dig out and see if I can set up.
Okay.
It would also be nice. I'm thinking maybe just want to have a separate camera. All right. I think that worked well. Do you want to sign off and I will, or do you want you?
Move to Autoptic.
Yes. Feel free to
Give us money. Thanks for humoring my drawing. Thanks for asking me good questions.
Thanks for being here and drawing.
Anytime.
And when should they tune in again?
Saturday, 12 p.m. Central to 5 p.m. Central.
Yeah, if you tune in anytime during that period of time for as long as you want, you'll be seeing some sort of amazing artist drawing some sort of amazing thing.
Better artists, better drawings.
Better
Saturday. It's gonna rule.
I think will be fine. Right. And then we're gonna end the stream. We do that here.
Where it says on screen.